other thing that happened over the weekend that certainly just wasn't as exciting as Dak getting a new contract was the NBA All-Star night. It wasn't like an All-Star weekend because I guess the NBA just didn't want to spend so much time putting on this gigantic events, but the NBA All-Star Game happened over the weekend for those of you who knew that it was even happening at all. I mean, I believe I remember reading something like the NBA All-Star Game drew less of an audience on TV than a Shark Tank episode that was in the same time slot. Don't get me wrong, Shark Tank's a fantastic show, but I was watching this All-Star Game and I was just bored. I don't know if anybody else felt the same way if you ended up watching this All-Star Game. I mean, you could have gone on YouTube and searched up the highlights of this All-Star Game and essentially gotten the same idea. I was utterly bored watching this All-Star Game, and I just couldn't help going through my mind or having the thought go through my mind, just, is this all really necessary? And I kind of got the vibe that the players felt that too. It's like, is this all really necessary? And of course, there was a lot of talk by certain players leading up to it saying that the idea is stupid or that it shouldn't happen. And the way that I would equate this and the way that I would compare this, it's like you're eating dinner at a fine dining restaurant. And, you know, you've had your meal. It's fine. Maybe you didn't quite like what you ordered, but the food quality was still good. And the waiter comes and he says, "Would you like some dessert?" And in this case, the NBA All-Star Game is dessert. Now, you don't always need dessert. You don't always want dessert, but sometimes you get dessert anyways, because why not? You know? And so in this comparison, in this situation, the NBA All-Star Game is the dessert. The waiter comes back with your dessert, and you eat the dessert, and you're like, is this really worth the calories? Is this worth me with a bellyache lying on my couch at home after I get home from this fancy dinner? It's like, sure, it's dessert. It's nice to have. It tastes good, but or in this case, it's kind of just meh. It's nice to have, but you don't necessarily need it. And after the fact, you just feel unfulfilled in the fact that you had dessert when you didn't necessarily need to. Again, a lot of people, especially in America, if a waiter comes up to you and say, hey, do you want dessert? It's like, do I want dessert? Do I need dessert? No. Do I want dessert? Maybe. You kind of get the comparison that I'm going for here. It's the NBA All-Star Game was boring, and I felt like even though I didn't necessarily need an All-Star Game this season, the NBA players didn't need an All-Star Game this season, and you know, one person wanted an All-Star Game this season, and that was Adam Silver. And I can understand, again, why the All-Star Game happened. Obviously, it's a great financial success, or most of the time it is a financial success for the NBA. And, of course, a lot of the proceeds of the All-Star Game this year went to beneficiaries for charities and everything, which is fantastic. Like, I will always applaud Adam Silver for doing things like that with the NBA. It's fantastic. The charitable work is incredible consistently. But still, the point I keep going back to is I'm watching this All-Star Game and I'm like, I mean, is this really necessary? Like, I'm bored out of my mind. I am bored with my dessert. It should be sweet. It should be enticing. It should be entertaining, but it just wasn't. And again, it calls back to it. Did we really actually need the All-Star Game this season? And my answer would be no, you didn't need the All-Star Game this season. The dunk contest was underwhelming. They need to do, and obviously we've been spoiled as basketball fans with Blake Griffin and Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon over the past, I would say, 7 to 8 years of dunk contest. But this year just had no pizzazz. And sure, a byproduct of that is only having 1,500 people in the arena as opposed to an arena full of fans. But just everything about this night, the three-point contest, was actually probably the best thing, Steph winning on the last shot. Whether it came to the three-point contest or the dunk contest or the All-Star Game itself, I mean, the headline coming out of the All-Star Game for Giannis, for this All-Star Game was, hey, Giannis went perfect from the field. Who cares? I mean, it was boring. And let me get this straight. I love basketball. I love basketball. I love watching basketball. I find it entertaining. I think the skill that it takes to play basketball is enticing. And normally I'm watching the All-Star game and I'm thinking, just wow, these guys are so talented. But I hope some of you agree with me in saying, like, this entire night just lacked pizzazz, and I'm not sure what it was. Was it just the lack of fans? Was it the lack of willingness by the players? Was it just the reality that something like this is going to be dull in a COVID world that we all live in daily? I don't know. It was just boring. The dessert that is the NBA All-Star Game was just boring. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't satisfying. And at the end, when we're writing the check to the NBA, or we're finishing our check and we're leaving the restaurant, it's like, man, we really could have gone without, having dessert. And the other thing is that sure, they got through that night with nobody testing positive for coronavirus, as far as I'm aware. I believe that was a headline coming out after the festivities that ended, is that nobody tested positive, which is fantastic. But you also would have had no positives if the game wasn't held to begin with. And these players got to have extra rest instead of being forced into doing a dunk contest and a three-point contest in an all-star game, which, again, there were some highlights in that game. Steph and Dame trading half-court three-point shots was intense to watch. But other than that, and again, the proceeds going to beneficiaries and the structure of the All-Star game was fine, but it lacked pizzazz. It was boring to watch, and I just couldn't help but think that, man, we just didn't need this. We didn't need this, although I understand that financially the NBA probably really needed an All-Star game, but it was boring, and I'm sad to say that it was boring. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.